Hi, I'm Chris Shelton.
And I'm Parisa Shelton.
Coming to you from a cloudy day here in San Jose, California, the heart of Silicon Valley, wanting to wish you a happy holiday.
Happy holiday. Can
Yes.
you believe it's going to be the end of a decade here pretty soon?
And the begin of a new Chinese zodiac, a new 12-year cycle too. So big things are in store for us as we unfold these next few weeks here.
Wow, I can hardly believe it. Time is just whizzing by.
So we thought that we'd wrap up this decade and to kick off this new Chinese New Year zodiac
By giving you tips and tools on how to let it go.
how to let it go. So, you know, during the holiday season, there's a lot of people that will tend to get their panties all up in a bunch, and and those kinds of people, what can we do in order to help ourselves? Self-preservation, right?
Self-preservation. And by it, we mean anything less than optimal, anything that's bothering you. If someone says something that doesn't suit you, and then the mind tends to ruminate on it, when in fact that's not healthy. How do we let that go if someone irks you?
Irks you. Not like Urkel back in the day, right?
No, not like Urkel.
Okay, so one of the first tips that I like to give to people, and that I do myself, is I love to journal. And if there's something that has irritated me or bothered me, or if there's a person or an event that has gotten my panties all up in a bunch, then I will journal, and I will journal for 1 to 2 hours sometimes, and I will go through every single detail as to what transpired during the event, because believe it or not, when we actually journal, there's an energy transformation that goes from the pen to the paper, and it helps you to release some of that angst.
And get clarity exactly on how you're feeling about the situation.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what would you do?
Another thing that I do personally is I try to give it some space. So for example, about a week ago I had an unpleasant conversation with a family member, and after the conversation ended, I literally went into the bathroom and gave myself some space. I might have cried a little bit. I shook it off, and then I left, and because I really felt like I needed space. I needed some distance between what was going on. And as a result of getting space, I was able to get more clarity about how I was feeling and why it bothered me so much.
Yeah, so taking that lower position a lot of times, Lao Tzu says it best in the Tao Te Ching that the thing about water is that it's soft, but it can penetrate rock. It's something that can't be contained. It always seeks to connect with the whole, and what it always does too is it always takes the lower position. So sometimes non-doing or taking the lower position is actually a lot better than trying to be reactive or allowing that ego to show up. When something happens, actually taking a step back and pausing, taking a couple deep breaths, and instead of being reactive, taking a couple deep breaths and allow yourself to regroup. And sometimes, the I Ching actually says, the Book of Change and Unchanging Truth actually says that sometimes non-doing is better than doing. So most of us, or there's a lot of people out there, myself, I've been guilty of this too, where I've been reactive. And nowadays what I do is I actually take a pause and I ask myself, is this something really that I need to address? And if it is something that I need to address, then I need to say it and then let it go. But sometimes it's something that I don't need to say anything about, because sometimes you just can't deal with crazy. And so sometimes it's actually better not saying anything. And then the key though is that you have to let it go. You can't ruminate on it if you don't say anything. You have to let it go.
The non-response response.
Yep.
It's like that Meghan Trainor song, you need to let it go. One thing too is that if you are able to create space in that kind of uncomfortable situation and actually go for a walk, what that does is that it retrains the brain and it circulates so that you can redirect your focus, and what was previously bothering you won't bother you as much.
Yeah, and the other thing I like to do too is mirror talk. So I talk to myself in the mirror every single morning, and as we come around these holidays, like I said, there's some people that just like to create some type of reaction from you or get some kind of trigger or know how to trigger or push your buttons. So before going into a situation, by co-manifesting with God, with your source, higher power, whatever you want to call it, what I do is I look myself in the mirror and I say to myself in the mirror that I choose to co-create with God, that I come from a place of conscious action and non-reaction. Conscious action and non-reaction. The other thing that I'll sometimes say to myself too, depending on the situation, if I know that it's going to be intense or uncomfortable, is that I say to myself that I already possess within myself to come from a place of appropriate action as opposed to just reacting.
That's really deep.
Deep.
Which reminds me of a practice called simultaneous recall. And what simultaneous recall is the ability to process what you hear as the thing is coming towards you. Meaning that I'm listening and I'm processing so that I can be direct in my communication. Because what happens is most of us aren't direct in our communication, and then we go back and we think, oh, I should have said this. How many times have you been in a conversation and then you go back and you're like, dang it, why didn't I go here or there? And then that causes passive aggressive behavior, which continues the cycle. So what we want to do is we want to be able to process what we're hearing. We want to be as direct as we can in our communication so that we don't have to ruminate in the future.
Correct. Yeah, so certain Qigong practices that we would go ahead and do is shaking it off or shaking the tree. Yeah, so you may have to, when somebody does something that upsets you, you have that vibration inside your body. Going into another room and shaking it off a few times or maybe even several times depending on the circumstance actually helps to release the vibration. So even if you have the thought in your mind, shaking it off is really good. In all animals in nature, when something happens to them, doesn't matter if a dog is happy to see you or a dog is angry at you, that dog will shake from head to toe. Two ducks get into a fight, the fight lasts for a few seconds, they swim away, and the first thing they do is they violently flap their wings. Why? Because they're conscious enough to know that they have that vibration. Now, animals may not know that it's anger or overexcitation or whatnot, but they are aware enough that they have that vibration. Us humans, we hold on to it, and this is what creates inflammation and disease, and so we want to let it go. And depending on the situation, you may have to shake it off throughout the day. Every time that you have that thought and it creates some kind of tension inside your body, just shake it off. It's a really good one.
That's a great practice. Another practice is called emotional freedom technique, also
tapping.
known as tapping, which is based on Chinese medicine, and there's tons of videos on YouTube about different tapping sequence. But really quick, when you do the tapping and the emotional freedom technique, you have what is called a setup statement. And you start by tapping on the karate chop point. And you reaffirm to yourself that although I have this angst or this issue, whatever it is, fear, sadness, disappointment, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. And you repeat that. You say that 3 times. You can say it out loud or to yourself. And then you continue to tap on specific points throughout the body. And guess what happens? After you do that, 3, 5, 10 minutes, you are able to let it go in such a beautiful, peaceful way that it doesn't bother you anymore, and you can go about your day and your business and really work towards peace and harmony.
Yeah, so we thought we'd just share some of the techniques that we do. What's really interesting is because of what Chris and I do for a living, a lot of people just think that we sit at home and eat vegetables all day and that we have no stress. We actually had somebody ask Parisa a few weeks ago, they said, do you and Chris ever argue? And it's like, oh my gosh, we work together, we live together, there's some disagreements obviously. So we're human just like you are, and these are the techniques that we utilize in order to keep ourselves more in balance. And instead of repeating the old patterns of, let's say, blowing up or holding on, creating inflammation and digestive issues and sleepless nights, what we do is we actually do these techniques. And so I thought to wrap up again, one of the first things that I suggest is to journal. And the more detailed you are in your journaling when you have an event that upsets you, the more that you release that energy. So take the time and journal every single detail of it.
And then the other thing we talked about is to give it space and to go on a walk, to redirect your mind, refocus your thought patterns so that you can then come back and be very focused and concise with your energy.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I suggest is doing mirror talk, co-creating with God, with your higher self, that you come from a place of conscious action and non-reaction. And also another thing on that one too is that a lot of times we build ourselves up for things. And one of the other things that I actually say to myself in the mirror is that nothing is ever as bad as what my ego makes it out to be. Because a lot of times our egos make it out to be something much bigger than we work ourselves up, then the event happens, and chances are it's not even nearly as bad as what our minds have made it up to be.
That's so true. And then we gave the example of shaking it off. Shaking it off is such a powerful tool. And then lastly, we talked about tapping or
EFT.
EFT as a really potent technique to redirect the thinking and to let it go.
Let it go. You gotta let it go. All right, so for a beautiful cloudy day here in San Jose, California, wishing you all a happy and safe holiday. Remember, stress less, drink less, eat less, and be happy.
Be happy. And until next year, next decade,
We will. Actually,
we will.
See you later.